Logan Carter didn't have time for distractions, especially not love. His entire life was meticulously scheduled, every hour dedicated to expanding his multi-million-dollar tech empire. While others his age were partying, traveling, or falling in love, Logan was sealing deals, investing in startups and ensuring his company, Carter Innovations, dominated the industry. Love was messy, unpredictable, a risk he wasn't willing to take, but then he met her. It happened on a Monday, the kind of day Logan thrived on: meetings, negotiations, decisions. He was stepping out of his sleek black McLaren, adjusting the cuff of his custom-tailored suit, when the sound of a frustrated sigh caught his attention. A woman stood a few feet away, struggling to balance a stack of books, a coffee cup, and a phone pressed between her ear and shoulder. As she turned, one of the books slipped from her grasp, tumbling toward the pavement. Without thinking, Logan caught it mid-air. "Wow," she breathed, looking up at him. "Nice reflexes." Logan found himself staring at her, really staring. She wasn't dressed like the polished executives he was used to. No designer labels, no perfectly styled hair. Instead, she wore a simple navy blue dress, her long brown hair pulled into a loose ponytail, a few strands falling over her face. There was something refreshingly real about her. "Thanks," he said, handing her the book. "You're a lifesaver," she said, flashing a grateful smile. "I swear Mondays are out to get me." "That makes two of us," Logan replied, surprising himself. She adjusted the stack of books in her arms. "I'm Charlotte, by the way, Charlotte Hayes." "Logan Carter." Her eyes widened slightly. The Logan Carter, as in Carter Innovations. He wasn't sure what he expected her reaction to be, maybe intimidation, maybe awe. But instead, she just nodded, as if filing the information away. "Well," she said, shifting her weight, "thanks again for saving my book. I should probably get going before I cause another disaster." Before he could stop himself, Logan spoke. "Let me buy you another coffee. You look like you could use one." Charlotte blinked in surprise. "You want to buy me coffee? Consider it a thank you for making my Monday slightly less dreadful." She hesitated, then grinned. "All right, Mr. Carter, but only if I get to pick the place." And just like that, Logan's carefully structured world tilted. The coffee shop Charlotte chose was nothing like the upscale cafes Logan usually frequented. It was small, cozy, with chalkboard menus, and the rich scent of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. "You come here often?" Logan asked as they sat down with their drinks. "Every morning," Charlotte said. "It's my pre-work ritual, helps me survive the day." "What do you do?" "I'm a literature professor," she said, stirring her coffee. "Well, technically an assistant professor, but hopefully not for long." "A professor?" Logan raised an eyebrow. "You don't look like the type," Charlotte smirked. "And what does that mean?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I guess I imagine professors as older, more serious." "Oh, I can be serious," she said, mock offended. "I just prefer to save it for the classroom." Logan found himself smiling. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had a conversation that wasn't about business, stocks, or profit margins. "So, what about you?" Charlotte asked. "Do you really work 100 hours a week like the rumors say?" He chuckled. "Something like that. Sounds exhausting." "It's necessary." Charlotte tilted her head. "Necessary for what?" Logan hesitated. No one ever asked him that. People assumed he worked relentlessly because he wanted power, success, wealth. But the truth was, he didn't know how to stop. "Building something that lasts," he finally said. Charlotte studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I get that, but don't you ever want to just slow down?" "Slowing down isn't an option." Charlotte laughed softly. "You say that like it's a rule written in stone. For me, it is." She sipped her coffee, thoughtful. "Maybe one day someone will change that." Logan didn't respond. Because for the first time in years, he wondered if she might be right. And that thought terrified him. Logan wasn't a man who second-guessed his decisions. He made choices quickly and efficiently, always with a clear goal in mind. But as he drove back to his office after his unexpected coffee with Charlotte, he found himself replaying their conversation. The way she laughed so easily. The way she had looked at him not as a billionaire, not as a business mogul, but as a man. It was unsettling. And yet, when his assistant reminded him of his packed schedule for the rest of the day, all he could think about was how Charlotte had casually asked him if he ever wanted to slow down. No one had ever asked him that before. By the time evening rolled around, Logan had convinced himself it was nothing. A fleeting moment, an unusual lapse in his otherwise structured life. He had no reason to see Charlotte again. Except, 2 days later he did. It wasn't intentional, at least, that's what he told himself. He was walking past the same coffee shop on his way to a meeting when he spotted her sitting by the window, a book in her hands, a soft smile playing on her lips as she read. Before he could think better of it, he pushed open the door. Charlotte glanced up just as the bell above the entrance chimed. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him. Logan Carter. "Twice in the same week. I'm starting to think you might actually like this place," he smirked. "Or maybe I just wanted another terrible cup of coffee," she laughed, shaking her head. "You are such a snob." "Undeniably." He gestured to the seat across from her. "Mind if I join you?" She hesitated for only a second before closing her book and nodding. "Be my guest." Logan sat down, feeling strangely at ease. He couldn't remember the last time he had sat in a coffee shop without a business reason, without an agenda. It was unfamiliar territory, but he found himself enjoying it. "You always read here?" he asked, nodding toward her book. "Every chance I get," Charlotte said. "It's my escape." "Escape from what?" she sighed dramatically. "Grading papers, office politics, the occasional overly enthusiastic student who thinks I can change their failing grade with a smile." Logan chuckled. "Sounds exhausting." "It can be," she admitted, "but I love it. Literature has always been my passion." It was obvious in the way she spoke, in the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her work. Logan admired that. He had built his empire on ambition, on an unrelenting drive. But passion. That was something different, something rare. "So tell me, Mr. Carter," Charlotte said, tilting her head, "what do you do when you're not working?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "You know, hobbies, interests, fun." Logan frowned, as if the concept was foreign to him. "I work," Charlotte laughed. "That's not a hobby. It is when you love what you do. But do you?" She challenged. "Or are you just good at it?" Logan opened his mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. No one had ever questioned him like this before. People admired his success, envied his wealth, but no one had ever asked if he actually enjoyed it. Charlotte leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "You know, Logan, I think you might be the most fascinatingly complicated man I've ever met." He smirked, masking the way her words unsettled him. "And I think you might be the only person who isn't intimidated by me." She shrugged. "Should I be?" Logan didn't answer. Because for the first time in his life, he realized he didn't want her to be. For the next hour, they talked. Not about business, not about stock markets or quarterly reports, but about books, music, travel. Logan found himself revealing things he hadn't thought about in years, like how he used to love sailing when he was younger. How he once dreamed of designing something revolutionary before business took over his life. And Charlotte, she listened, really listened. By the time he finally glanced at his watch, he realized he was late for his next meeting. He should have cared, but he didn't. As he stood to leave, Charlotte smiled up at him. "See you around, Logan." He hesitated, then gave her a slow nod. "Yeah, see you around." But as he walked away, he knew that wasn't enough. For the first time in as long as he could remember, Logan Carter wanted more. Logan wasn't a man who let distractions steer him off course. Discipline was what had built his empire, what had made him one of the most powerful men in the industry. But ever since that afternoon in the coffee shop with Charlotte, he found himself thinking about her at the most inconvenient moments. During meetings, he'd catch himself wondering what book she was reading that day. In the middle of reviewing contracts, his mind would drift back to the way she had leaned forward, eyes filled with curiosity, asking him if he truly loved his work or if he was just good at it. No one had ever spoken to him like that before, like he was more than his name, his wealth, his reputation. And now, for the first time in years, Logan Carter was distracted. It wasn't long before he saw her again. This time, it wasn't by chance. He had told himself he was simply in the neighborhood, that stopping by the coffee shop wasn't premeditated. But even as he stepped inside and spotted Charlotte sitting at her usual spot by the window, he knew that was a lie. She glanced up, and when she saw him, a slow smile spread across her face. "Logan Carter," she said, closing her book. "Are you following me?" He smirked, sliding into the seat across from her. "If I were, I'd be more discreet about it," Charlotte chuckled. "So what brings you here? Another terrible cup of coffee?" "Something like that," he admitted. She studied him for a moment, as if trying to read between the lines. Then she leaned back in her chair, her expression amused. "All right, I'll bite. What's on your mind, Mr. Carter?" Logan wasn't sure how to answer that. He wasn't a man who shared easily. But with Charlotte, everything felt different. "You asked me something the other day," he said, "about whether I actually love my work or if I'm just good at it." She nodded, waiting. "I haven't stopped thinking about it." Charlotte tilted her head, intrigued, and I'm not sure I know the answer." For a moment she said nothing, then she smiled. "That's an honest answer, I respect that." Logan exhaled, shaking his head. "I don't know why I'm telling you this." "Maybe because no one else has ever asked," she said simply. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something inside him shifted. Charlotte wasn't like anyone he had ever met. She didn't try to impress him, didn't play games or act like his wealth meant anything to her. She saw him, not the billionaire, not the CEO, but the man beneath it all. And he wasn't sure what to do with that. "You know," Charlotte said, breaking the silence, "if you ever want to test the whole slowing down thing, I have an idea." Logan raised an eyebrow. "Should I be concerned?" She laughed. "Not at all, but you might be out of your element." He leaned forward, intrigued. "Try me," Charlotte grinned. "Come with me this Saturday." No suits, no meetings, no business calls, just a normal, ordinary day. Logan hesitated. His Saturdays were usually reserved for work, for catching up on things that couldn't be handled during the week. But as he looked at Charlotte, he realized something startling. For the first time in years, he wanted to do something simply because it felt right. "All right," he said. "I'm in." Saturday arrived quicker than Logan expected, and before he could second-guess his decision, he found himself standing outside Charlotte's apartment. He had never done anything like this before, spontaneous plans, no agenda, no structure. When she opened the door, Logan barely recognized her. Gone was the polished, put-together professor he had seen before. Instead, she wore a pair of jeans, a casual sweater, and sneakers, her hair pulled into a loose ponytail. She looked effortlessly beautiful. "You clean up well," she teased, eyeing his dark jeans and fitted sweater. "I was afraid you'd show up in a suit," Logan smirked. "I was tempted." She laughed, grabbing her coat. "All right, billionaire, let's see if you can survive a day without business meetings." He followed her down the street, unsure of what to expect. Charlotte led him through a part of the city he rarely visited, showing him small bookstores, hole-in-the-wall cafes, and quiet parks he had never noticed before. She made him try street food, something he hadn't done in years, and dragged him into a second-hand bookstore, insisting he pick out a novel without knowing anything about it. Logan found himself enjoying every second of it. He wasn't thinking about stock prices or deals. He wasn't strategizing his next move. He was simply there with her. As the afternoon faded into evening, they found themselves sitting on a bench overlooking the city skyline. The air was crisp, the lights of the buildings reflecting in Charlotte's eyes. "See," she said, nudging him playfully. "You survived a day without work," Logan chuckled. "I did, and," he exhaled, looking at her, "and I think I might want more of this." Charlotte's smile softened. "That's a dangerous admission, Mr. Carter." "Why?" "Because once you start wanting more, it's hard to go back." Logan studied her, his chest tightening in a way that was both unfamiliar and exhilarating. He had spent his entire life chasing success, believing that nothing else mattered. But sitting there, watching Charlotte as the city lights flickered around them, he realized something. He wanted her. And for the first time in his life, Logan Carter was ready to risk everything for something real. Logan had always believed that control was the key to success. He controlled his company, his time, his emotions. But Charlotte Hayes was the one thing he hadn't anticipated, the one variable he couldn't calculate, and the one force that had completely unraveled his carefully constructed life. And he didn't want to fight it anymore. Days turned into weeks, and Logan found himself carving out time in his impossibly packed schedule just to be with her. He took her to private rooftop dinners, to hidden jazz clubs she swore had the best music in the city, to the kind of quiet bookstores he never would have noticed before. Every moment with her felt both exhilarating and terrifying, like he was walking along the edge of something unknown, something that had the power to consume him entirely. But there was one thing he hadn't told her yet. He had never said the words before, not to anyone. Logan Carter did not fall in love. He didn't have time for it, didn't believe in it. But with Charlotte, it wasn't a question of belief, it was a fact. And the moment he realized it, he knew he had to tell her. So he planned something special. Charlotte had mentioned once, in passing, that she had always wanted to see the city from the water. Not on some crowded tourist boat, but somewhere quiet, somewhere she could just watch the skyline reflect on the waves. Logan made it happen. That evening, he picked her up in his sleek black Aston Martin, refusing to tell her where they were going. She laughed, indulging his secrecy, and when they arrived at the marina, her eyes widened in surprise. "Logan," she breathed, staring at the sleek, luxury yacht waiting for them. "You rented a yacht." He smirked. "Technically, I own it." She turned to him, shaking her head in amusement. "Of course you do." He took her hand, leading her onto the deck, where a private chef had already set up a candlelit dinner under the stars. Charlotte looked around, wonder in her eyes, and Logan felt something tighten in his chest. He had taken countless women on extravagant dates before, but this was different. This was her. As they ate, the city lights shimmered across the water, and Charlotte leaned against the railing, gazing out at the skyline. "This is incredible," she murmured. "I don't think I've ever seen the city like this." Logan stepped closer, his fingers brushing against hers. "I wanted to do something special for you." She turned to face him, her expression soft. "You didn't have to." "I did," he said quietly, "because you're special to me." Something flickered in her eyes, something unreadable. "Logan." He took a breath, knowing this was the moment. "I've spent my entire life believing that love was a distraction, that it was something I couldn't afford. But then I met you, and suddenly, nothing else mattered." Charlotte stared at him, her lips parting slightly. "I love you, Charlotte," he said, his voice steady, certain, "and I don't want to spend another day pretending I don't." For a moment she said nothing. Then, to his utter shock, she looked away. "Charlotte," she swallowed, her hands gripping the railing tightly. "Logan, He felt a slow, cold dread settle in his chest. "You don't feel the same way." She turned back to him quickly, her eyes filled with something almost like pain. "No, I do. God, I do," she said. "But that's the problem." Logan frowned. "I don't understand." Charlotte exhaled shakily. "You're Logan Carter. You belong to a world I don't fit into." And I'm terrified that if I let myself love you, really love you, I'll end up losing myself in it." His jaw clenched. "You think I'd ever let that happen?" She gave him a sad smile. "I don't think you'd mean to, but your life is big, it's powerful, and I don't know if I'm strong enough to stand in it without being swallowed whole." Logan felt something crack inside him. He had fought for everything in his life, conquered every challenge. But this was the only battle that truly mattered, and he wasn't going to lose. Without a word, he took her hand and placed it over his heart. "Do you feel that?" Charlotte nodded, her fingers trembling against his chest. "It's yours," he said fiercely. "Not my business, not my money, not my reputation, just this, just me." Her breath hitched. "Logan, I don't care about the rest of it," he said. "I only care about you." Tears glistened in her eyes, and for a moment he thought she was going to pull away. But then she surged forward, wrapping her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you so much it scares me." Logan closed his eyes, exhaling in relief as he held her tightly. "Then let me prove to you that you have nothing to be afraid of." She pulled back just enough to look up at him, searching his face. And then she kissed him. It wasn't desperate or rushed. It was slow, deep, filled with everything they had been holding back. Logan poured every ounce of himself into that kiss, silently vowing that he would spend the rest of his life proving to her that she belonged with him. Because Charlotte Hayes wasn't just a distraction, she was everything. Logan had never felt this kind of certainty before. Deals, negotiations, acquisitions, those were things he could control, things he could predict. But love was unpredictable, messy, sometimes even dangerous. And yet, as Charlotte kissed him under the stars, he knew without a doubt that this was the most important thing he'd ever fought for. She was everything. The yacht rocked gently on the waves as their lips parted, but Charlotte didn't pull away. Her hands remained on his chest. Her fingers curled slightly into the fabric of his sweater as if she was afraid to let go. Logan lifted a hand to her face, brushing his thumb over her cheek. Memorizing the way she looked in that moment, her eyes filled with emotion, her lips slightly parted, her breath mingling with his. "I don't want to be afraid," she whispered. Logan's grip on her tightened. "Then don't be." She let out a short laugh, shaking her head. "You make it sound so easy." "It is," he said. "Loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done." Charlotte let out a shaky breath, and then, slowly, a smile crept onto her lips. "You really don't give up, do you?" "Not when it comes to you," she exhaled, resting her forehead against his chest. "I feel like I'm standing on the edge of something huge." Logan pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Then let's jump together." Charlotte lifted her head, meeting his gaze, and then, just like that, her fear melted away. They spent the rest of the evening on the yacht, wrapped in each other, talking about everything and nothing. Logan had never been one for late-night conversations, but with Charlotte, he could have stayed there forever, listening to her thoughts, the way she saw the world, the way she made him feel like more than just his name, his success, his fortune. By the time they returned to the city, Logan knew one thing for certain: this was just the beginning. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Logan had always kept his personal life separate from his business, but with Charlotte, the lines blurred. He found himself leaving meetings early just to see her, rescheduling calls to steal a few more hours in her presence. His employees noticed, his business partners raised eyebrows, but Logan didn't care. He took her to the kind of places he had never shared with anyone before: his private estate in the Hamptons, a hidden villa in Italy for a weekend escape, even his childhood home, where he had grown up before he built his empire. Charlotte fit into his world in a way he never expected, not because she tried to, but because she never treated it like something unattainable. She teased him when he was being too serious, challenged him when he tried to control too much, and reminded him that there was more to life than work and wealth. For the first time in his life, Logan Carter wasn't just living, he was feeling. But love, even the strongest kind, is never without its challenges. It started subtly whispers in the media, headlines speculating about the woman who had captured Logan Carter's attention. At first, Charlotte brushed it off, laughing at the ridiculous tabloid stories. But then the rumors turned sharper. Charlotte Hayes, gold digger or genuine love? Is Logan Carter's new romance destined to fail? Sources say Charlotte Hayes is already planning to marry into billions. Logan had seen this happen before. The media loved to tear down anything that seemed too good to be true, and their relationship was no exception. But when he saw the way Charlotte's smile faded every time she checked her phone, the way she hesitated before holding his hand in public, he knew it was affecting her more than she let on. "Ignore them," he told her one evening as they sat in his penthouse, the city lights stretching out beneath them. "They don't know us," Charlotte sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I knew dating you would come with attention, but I didn't expect this." Logan reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I won't let them hurt you." "I know," she said softly. "But it's not just about me. My students see these headlines, my colleagues. It's like my entire life is being rewritten by people who don't even know me." Logan's jaw tightened. He hated this. Hated that the world was trying to make her doubt what they had. "You trust me, don't you?" he asked. She looked at him, her expression serious. "With everything?" "Then let me handle this." Charlotte hesitated. "Logan, I mean it," he said firmly. "You're not in this alone." The next day, Logan did something he had never done before. He held a press conference. Standing in front of a sea of reporters, he didn't talk about business, didn't announce a new deal or acquisition. Instead, he looked straight into the cameras and said, "I am in love with Charlotte Hayes, and anyone who questions her integrity, her character, or her place in my life is questioning me as well. She is not after my money, she is not playing a game, she is the woman I love, and that is the only story that matters." The media exploded. But more importantly, when Logan returned to Charlotte that evening, she was waiting for him with tears in her eyes. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes, I did," he said, pulling her into his arms, "because I meant every word." Charlotte laughed softly, shaking her head. "You really don't do anything halfway, do you?" "Not when it comes to you." She reached up, cupping his face. "Then I guess it's a good thing I love you just as much." And just like that, Logan Carter, the man who had once believed love was a risk he couldn't afford, knew that he had made the best investment of his life. Charlotte wasn't just part of his world. She was his world.